Welcome to Wonderland, the podcast where I go down the rabbit hole to research things you may be curious about. My name is Amii, and I'll be your guide on this trip to Wonderland.
Welcome back, my Wonderlings, for another spooky-themed episode. In previous years, we've learned about the history of Halloween and some of the traditions associated with it. Last year, we delved specifically into haunted houses. And as I was preparing for spooky season at my house, I started making a mental list of what movies I'd be watching this October. And that made me wonder.
I 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 wonder.
For this episode, we're going to dive into a rabbit hole full of scary monsters, scary people, and twisted storylines. We are going to talk about horror movies. I got to speak with a lot of people about their thoughts on horror movies, but in particular, I had the privilege of speaking with Jay Moulton, co-owner of the South Carolina Horror Convention, which just wrapped up their second year in September, and is already well underway working on their third year in 2025.
So, I am here with Jay Moulton. Moulton, is that right?
Yeah.
Jay Moulton, who is the co-owner of South Carolina Horror Con. And you are also the artist behind Two Horns Up Art.
I am.
And you handle the South Carolina Horror Con, which is had two very successful years and going into a third year coming up in 2025.
It is. I mean, we're very happy to have a success in the buckle of the Bible Belt.
So tell us more about so you had South Carolina Horror Con, and then you had South Carolina Horror, the sequel, which I think is a fantastic way to name your con. And then you've got 3D coming for the third year. So fantastic. I don't know who your person is who's handling your marketing. Oh, well, you're a genius.
No, I'm not. I have little to do when it comes to, imagination besides artwork. So I figured I'd spread that to South Carolina Horror.
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about Two Horns Up Art, because that does a lot of like horror looking art too.
Oh, yes. Yeah, actually, when I started doing shows, I was 5 when I started doing shows. Yeah, it's a lot of water under the bridge. I did a lot of work in Boston, New England. I owned 8 of them up in New England. And we moved down here never to do shows again. So I said, you know what? I'm so tired of paying people. I'm so tired of this. They're startups. They don't make a lot of money at first. You don't have a budget. So I said, you know what? I'll try to do my own poster for once. I'm tired of paying people hundreds of dollars or thousands. I just figure I'll make a cheesy poster. We'll have no show in South Carolina because nobody likes horror, and go from there. So I did a poster. I actually loved it. It inspired me to be all creative and do a whole bunch of different stuff. So Two Horns Up was spawned on by the first year of South Carolina Horror. I had a buddy just gave me a poster for the Red Year One teaser, but I created the zombie poster, the VHS, and things like that. So it really was kind of, if I didn't have South Carolina Horror, I never would have tried to be an artist. And since then, I've done several movie posters, DVDs, CDs, books, and I'm on IMDb about 8 times, which is humbling. So for only being an artist for a couple of
very
years.
cool.
Yeah. So people apparently like my brand of crazy.
Well, it's very neat. Like, it's got that retro feel. Like, I dig it.
Thank you.
So tell us, you said you started that because of the con. So tell us about the con. How did you get from Boston and swearing never to do cons down here to being in South Carolina doing a con?
Dude, I'm telling you, I didn't want to set foot in a con after Vermont. I owned Rock Comic Expo New Hampshire. I did one of those, and I did 7 in Vermont. 2 Rock Comic Expos and Vermont Comic Con. So it was a mix of genre, mostly pop culture. We had some horror, we had some comics. My life started with comics, so I first learned to read with that, and worked for a lot of the greats like Stan Lee and Joe Sinnott, Dick Ayers, and Neil Adams for a while. So my background's in pop culture anyway, and I decided I'd come down here never to work on cons again. So we came down here, and I, of course, started filling our new house with some sort of oddities and curiosities. And guy pulled me aside and said, "Hey, you want to pick up the stuff down here in Somerville? Because you're close. You're in South Carolina." It was a Facebook auction, and we went to breakfast. I'm thinking, geez, I'm going out with this stranger to breakfast. I'm probably gonna get stabbed or something. But he said, "Hey, nope, I've stalked you because I realized I invited a stranger to breakfast. You did all these shows. Like, would you consider doing one in South Carolina?" I said, "Absolutely not. No way, dude. The concert, no, 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 no." So then I actually sat and thought about it, talked to my wife about it, who's my real brain, um, because if I made decisions on my own, it'd be terrible. Um, so we talked about it for months and said, you know what, let's just try it. The people down here have welcomed us. I'm fully sleeved and tattooed everywhere. I figured I would be walking into a den of just khakis and boat shoes and polos, and come to find out there is a crowd down here. So they welcomed us so much that I said, let's just try it. If nobody shows up, screw it. Nobody's going to blame me. Whatever. We'll just have a fun show. We'll do our best and call it a day. And it was a very big success. We had over 3,500 people the first year. We just had over 4,200 in this past show, so we're
Holy
ready to rock it.
cow.
We're ready to rock a third, man.
I'm excited to share Jay's thoughts on horror movies as we spend some time in the rabbit hole this week. But before we start, let me ask.
You like scary movies?
While I'm sure there are plenty of people who dread spooky season and the scary movies that come with it, basically everyone I talk to loves Halloween and horror movies. Most of them can even remember their first horror movie.
I literally remember watching them since I was a kid. I think I was probably one of the first ones that I distinctly remember watching, and I was probably 9-ish years old, 10. I watched a movie called The Beast Within, and it freaked me out. But I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I was just like glued to the TV. I was like, no, I gotta see it.
When I was a kindergarten student, first grade, my best friend in school was named Adam, and anytime we slept over at his house, he would always play something like The Thing or The Blob or any sort of like really old, terribly shot old movies that were generally suspense or gore or whatever.
I don't remember when. Sorry.
That's okay.
Maybe I have no idea. Maybe I want to say, because it's the one that scares me the most, is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So I'm gonna say that's the first one I saw, and that was the scariest movie I've ever seen in my life since.
So, when did you first get into scary movies?
As a kid, at first, it was getting into them was you not being into them, and then being into them with your friends.
What's the first horror movie you remember seeing?
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, I forgot about those.
And were you scared?
I was, especially when
Could you sleep?
I think it was a struggle. But when he had the babysitter with the claws on the ceiling.
Yeah,
that was terrifying.
Really grew up. We used to have a Friday night junior midnight at my mom's house, right? That was basically pizza, junior mints, and horror movies. For some reason, it was just a thing. So I'd always go pick out the craziest, gnarliest covers I could find at the video store, because I was a poor kid. That's what we're allowed to get. You can get a video. So for buck or two, like, oh, Return Living Dead Part 2. I've never seen Part 1, but the cover is so crazy. I really want to see this. And we watched, of course, the slashers, but I gravitated more towards the grindhouse B-movie genre.
Largely, these people have been watching scary movies since they were children. But when do you think the first horror movie debuted?
I don't know, 1890s?
Oh, 1925
Release.
Ooh, I'm pretty sure that was pretty quick. I think in the 20s.
1936.
What do you think it was called?
Probably just murderer.
Killer, murderer.
I don't know if it was Italian or European, maybe like vampires or Dracula story.
Nosferatu.
Yes, that.
It is actually a 3-minute black and white silent short film that came out in 1896 by Georges Méliès called Le Manoir du Diable that is often accredited as the first horror movie. Jay and I spoke briefly on this topic.
So I did some research, and the world has been obsessed with horror movies since movies have started being movies. And so the horror movie that is, it seems, widely accredited as the first horror film was a little 3-minute short by Georges Millet in 1896. I watched it. I found it on YouTube and I watched it. Have you seen this at all? It's very kooky.
Not really. I've seen. I've heard Wikipedia everything. I've not.
Yeah.
I love silent films. Don't get me wrong. I'm a huge Chaplin and Lloyd fan. I love pantomime, and I love that sort of direction in film, like Metropolis and Paxson and stuff. But a little thing like a 3-minute film, I'm like, okay, I've probably seen 2 seconds of it. Great, whatever. It's gonna
Yeah,
catch my
and it's
attention, man.
ridiculous. Like it's got a guy and he is, I guess he's the devil. And there's these people walking in a castle and he's like playing pranks on them. Like he's conjuring up witches and he's poking them in the butt with a pitchfork. Like
Oh wait, I have
it's
seen
very,
that.
yeah, it's very silly. But apparently widely credited as the first horror movie.
I'll link the film on WTWLpod.com, but as I said, is a short, silent film that is set in a castle or mansion. English translations of this title are both The House of the Devil and The Haunted Castle, where a prankster devil summons ghosts and skeletons and transforms bats to terrorize a couple of visitors to the abode. The film wasn't intended to be scary, but instead, like other films of the era, was intended to showcase the wonder of what they could do with cinema. Karina Wilson of HorrorFilmHistory.com explains in her writing that when moving pictures first entered the scene, that the mere fact that they existed was enough to create excitement for people all over the world. For some, it felt like sorcery or magic. This novelty allowed for the most mundane scenes, such as a train pulling into a station, to be met with delight. Eventually, however, audiences would grow bored of these scenes from their lives, and that's when early creators of film, like Méliès, learned to manipulate the film to create special effects. And while Georges Méliès is often accredited with creating the first horror movie, it's the films that followed his that most people think of when they think of early horror films. And those are the ones that were inspired by literature, such as Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and Bram Stoker's Dracula. In the 1910s, works such as Robert Louis Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Dante's Divine Comedy, and Johann Wolfgang von Goethe's Faust sprung forth from the pages of books to the silver screens. On the heels of these followed a fascination with all things Gothic, with films like The Hunchback of Notre Dame and The Phantom of the Opera, and yes, Nosferatu, a 1922 short film by German director F.W. Murnau. It is after these Gothic films came out, and specifically after the 1931 version of Dracula release, that the word horror was used to describe the genre that these supernatural films fell into. Prior to that, the word horror was certainly used to describe different films, but it was as likely to apply to a movie about a thief as it was to apply to one about a monster being brought to life. With the introduction of horror films as a genre of moving pictures, so too horror film actors thrust forward into the public's eye. Actors such as Bela Lugosi began to specialize in the genre. Lugosi would go on to play villains in part due to his accent in films such as White Zombie in 1932, The Black Cat in 1934, The Raven in 1935, and over 100 other films before he passed in 1956. While early horror films focused heavily on supernatural and gothic, the genre would go on to evolve in such a way that subgenres became prevalent. During World War II, audiences developed a fascination with the atomic, and horror movies surged forward where monsters were created as a result of nuclear or atomic events. Audiences scared and delighted themselves by watching movies like Godzilla and Tarantula. In the 70s and 80s, fascination with the devil, witches, and the occult strode onto the scene with films such as The Exorcist and The Omen, which were frightening and disgusting as cinematic techniques continued to evolve to allow for horrifying special effects. The changing world meant changing films in the box office. Jay and I discussed this evolution and the subgenres of horror movies when we talked.
And then after that, you had fascination with the basically the novels. Your Frankenstein and Dante and all of that started coming in 1910s, 1920s. Things very gothic, like Hunchback of Notre Dame in the 20s. And then the 30s, according to the internet, that is the golden age of horror. So that's when it really started pouring out. The 30s. And that's the first time the word horror was actually used to describe the genre. So then after that, you start getting all kinds of horror subgenres. During World War II, apparently there was a fascination with the atomic. So you had your Godzillas and things like that.
50s Godzilla, yeah.
During the 70s and 80s, the occult was very big. Slashers were around, but got really big in the 80s. And then it's saying, according to a couple of different sites that I looked at, that in the 90s, it kind of fizzled until Scream.
It really did, but didn't. I mean, there was a lot in the 90s, but you really had to look for them. They were not anywhere near the top of the mainstream or even close. They were more like Z movies. There was always the Traumas of the world, and there was always the small studios that would crank out horror movies left and right. And those were great. There's some fascinating 90s ones. But then you get stuff like occasionally like The Crow, or you get stuff occasionally like I Know What You Did Last Summer or Scream. And that was sad. I mean, I'm glad it's made a resurgence. Really have.
Well, and then 2000s, we had zombies. Zombies got very big. And then that kind of brings us to now. And horror movies are, in the advent of streaming and everything else, they're just readily available all over from all different countries and all different types. And then you've got all the different subgenres. So I don't know. Like this list, and this is a Wikipedia list on this one.
Sure.
They talk about body horror. So things like Shivers and The Thing, which I've never seen either of them.
You've never seen The Thing?
I've never seen The Thing.
Oh, put that
I don't even know what it is. I don't even know what it's about.
Okay. If do you like Kurt Russell at all? He's he's fantastic. He's a star of the film. Keith David's in it. It's about an alien species. They're in Antarctica. And man, you cannot escape, and you don't know who the thing is. They can transform into or get into a person's body. So you basically are in Antarctica fighting against each other and not knowing who can't trust each other. It's a very good, I'd say it's a body horror, but it's also a mind F at the same time of the worst kind because, it's not so much like Battle Royale where could you kill your best friend? It's more like is it your best friend or is it your coworker or is it your, someone, is it human? So that's really cool. It's one of Carpenter's best.
I'll definitely have to check it out. And I like Carpenter just fine. But I just haven't watched, like I said, I'm a big old pansy, so I don't watch a lot of horror movies.
It's it could be creepy at times.
And part of it was Stephen King's fault because as like a teenager, I really did enjoy horror movies. But then like I had this so Pet Sematary, as ridiculous as that movie is, like I was watching it one time at my house all by myself and like 2:00 in the morning and my dog came up and scared like just the absolute me.
Good thing it wasn't Cujo.
Huh? But God almighty. So, and I saw that too. I guess if I think about it, I've seen more horror movies than I think about. When I was little, we lived in Germany and I accidentally saw The Birds. Nice. So like to this day, I'm 45 or however old I am. And I get real skittish around birds. I don't want them around me. But so yeah, I don't handle horror movies well. So just October. Anyway, the next one on here, Christmas movies and holiday horror. So things like Silent Night, Bloody Night, and Black Christmas.
Silent Night, Black
My
Christmas.
Bloody Valentine.
Yes, exactly. If you want holiday, there's new Thanksgiving movie. There's so many.
Have you seen? Is that out yet? I saw the previews for that.
We saw it in the theater, and I gotta tell you, it was to go back to actual production. If you've seen the Tarantino Rodriguez Grindhouse double feature back in what 09, 07?
Something like that.
I can't keep it straight. I love that movie, love that series. And in the middle of it were several fake trailers. There was Machete, which used to be a fake trailer. Then they made a new movie. Hobo with a Shotgun made a new movie. Werewolf from the SS, I wish was made into a movie, but it's not. There was Don't, but there was also Thanksgiving, which is my favorite trailer of all time, bar none. It was an Eli Roth trailer, silly little trailer about a Thanksgiving gone wrong slasher, etc. And they made a new movie, and I was like first in line, first day to see it. I love the movie. It's not as good as the trailer. It's good, but it's not. There's a few parts of the trailer they missed.
Oh.
But there's a lot of great holiday horror. There really is. My Bloody Valentine is one of my all-time favorites, both the remake and the 3D.
Okay.
I'm a sucker for 3D films, as you could tell.
After that, they talk about erotic horror, which they put Candyman and Hellraiser in those.
Sadistic, maybe, in that kind of way. But there's also, Jennifer's Body, and then there's if you want to go love stories. There's all sorts of fun stuff like Vampire Cleanup Department. One of my all-time favorites. You might actually like that. It's not too grotesque.
And I love vampires.
It's
like
a foreign
if you throw
film.
a vampire in it, I'll probably watch it.
Oh yeah, it's a love story. It's a foreign film, and like Warm Bodies. I love that movie. I'm a sucker for romantic horror as well, which sounds crazy. But sometimes you want the vampires to win and or the zombies to win, and they don't want to actually be zombies or vampires. But Vampire Cleanup Department is one of the best underrated movies of all time. It's a foreign film. It's an Asian film about a kid who goes to work with his uncle to clean up the city, but also they hunt vampires. He meets this girl vampire who seems very sweet and nice, can't communicate, but there's sort of like a nonverbal love going on between them, and he teaches her how to walk correctly and how to blend in the public, and it's just a sweet story. It really is cool.
Oh, I'll have to check it out. That does sound like something I would watch.
It's very very little gore, but it's super super like the movie oh gosh, I'm Spontaneous. Another one. I if you want me to bawl, watch Spontaneous, man. That's a love story. It's very horrific to a degree. People spontaneously combust in classrooms,
Oh,
and they're trying to figure out why people are spontaneously combusting. But it's a great love story between Dylan and Kim, the main actors of the movie. It's such a good film. Very very underrated. But then I'll find things that are not in the the ether, and I'll just pull them out of nowhere and be like, "Watch this because you'll love it." But those two are the least horrific love stories I could find.
that's awesome. I'll have to play this all back later so I can get them all
My
down so I
wife
can watch
calls
it.
me like she's going to cash in on me someday in Jeopardy or something.
After that, we've got folk horror, which is they gave The Blood on Satan's Claw,
Good
The
film.
Wicker Man, and The Witch as
Yeah,
examples.
yeah. The Blood on Satan's Claw is a very good movie. I mean, you can get most of these that you're talking about on Tubi, which is nice. It's one of the best services out there. I don't get sponsored by them, but I'm constantly on there. Blood on Satan's Claw is very much in the hammer horror genre or era, so it's a little bit on the cheesy but good side.
Okay. And then it's got found footage, which is your Blair Witch Project and paranormal activities and all of that, which I guess were really big in the 90s.
My least favorite genre, a subgenre of horror. Yeah, found footage does nothing for me. I don't know. It's just I don't like people walking around with a camera doing this thing. I don't like people, oh my God, there's a witch, and oh my God, check out this haunted house. Like when people ask me to go ghost hunting and stuff, I just turn it down, and it's not like I don't want to ruin their time.
Sure.
I would be the most skeptic person on earth, and I'd be the one making the noises and stuff. I'm a real big wise guy, so like I just can't stand found footage. I pass on it unless I'm booking somebody for the show and have to watch the movie.
Sure. So when those came out in the 90s, did you believe any of them were real, or you knew just absolutely produced?
I'm a big skeptic. I don't believe in crap. I wish I did. I don't. I get invited at least once a month to a ghost hunt, and I just say, dude, I say my schedule's really busy, which it is, but
Right.
it's more of an excuse to not ruin their night and just make fun of what's going on. I respect what people do, and I don't want to poke fun at them, but I would poke fun at it because of myself, and
Sure.
therefore I don't even want to go there.
Well, that's kind of you. I think that's a good thing to do. So after that, we've got gothic horror, which is your Dracula, your Frankenstein, and I haven't actually seen this. I was talking to Bear about it earlier. Get Out is lumped into the gothic horror.
Was not good.
Is it not good? Oh, like everybody talks about it. Like I haven't seen it at all.
If you're a fan of boring movies, maybe. Like I don't mind. I don't mind if a movie's got a story and it moves a little slow. But Get Out was freaking boring, dude. I almost walked out of the theater in that one.
Oh, holy cow!
I'm like, you know what? I paid $12 to get it. I'm gonna stay and watch this crap.
I'm gonna get my $12 out of this.
Right.
Natural horror. So that's things like The Birds, Frogs, Jaws, Night Creature, and then Sharknado.
I love that movie.
Is it? Okay, so I've never seen Sharknado either. Like I totally get the concept, but I have.
If there's a schlock movie out there, I've probably seen it. My subgenre that never is talked about is schlock. It's just crazy B movies, low budget crap movies where people's heads explode like watermelons, and it's just over the top, gratuitous nudity, violence, and gore. And I will be stuck on that like glue.
And it's called schlock.
Schlock it's like a term, like instead of using crap or it's like another term for B movies, very schlocky. If you've ever seen a trauma movie, they're like the king of schlock movies. It's more like on a very low budget, very poor effects, sometimes very crappy acting. I'm more into that. Although you mentioned Jaws, that's the one movie that scares the piss out of me still. You can't
Why?
reason with a shark, dude. And I hate the water. I'm from
Oh,
New England. I hate the water. Go figure.
yeah. Well, and at least you moved to the middle of South Carolina. I was like, you came to South Carolina. There's
I'm in the
still water here.
Midlands. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, the first thing I did when I got here was like, one of the beaches are nice here. Oh, okay, honey. Yeah, the beaches are great because there's a lot of sharks out there. Thanks. Awesome. Like my kids send me shark toys and all the birthdays and Christmas and stuff because they know it gets me.
uh, um. So psychological horrors like Psycho and The Shining, The Others, The Strangers. And then honestly, I pulled a list of these off of IMDb on this one, and it included things like Seven and Silence of the Lambs, which I don't know
Yep.
that I would have thought of as horror
Oh,
movies.
yes, it is, and it also Mother's Day is a good one too for psychological horror. That one, or it's kind of like the Desperate Hours meets Silence of the Lambs, or you know, it's very much precursor to The Strangers, where this mom and their sons go to this house, basically do everything you could possibly think of to a human being to these people. Not to get too graphic, but it's it's very bloody and very gross. But they also did a remake, which was actually very few remakes make me go, "Ooh, that was good." Mother's Day, Crazy stuff like that that's some good stuff. But yeah, Silence of the Lambs was the only horror movie to win the Best Picture for Academy Award, which I don't care about the Academy Awards. They mean bollocks to me,
Yeah.
but it's nice to be recognized as a genre once in a while.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, I don't feel like until I read that list in my head, Silence of the Lambs was not a horror movie. Like, I get that it
Eating
is,
people,
but you know,
I
I
mean,
get that it is, but it did not register at all as a horror movie to me. But I haven't seen it in 20 years or
it's
something
actually one of my
either.
least favorite films, to be honest with you. Not to sound sad, but The Silence of the Lambs was just meh.
Where did you land on The Strangers?
I
So,
thought it was okay. I mean, it's not bad.
so
I say I like Mother's Day so much that it was kind of like, okay, that was cool. See, I'm a big fan of The Desperate Hours. It's like an old Bogart film. I love all sorts of genres and years and eras, where they keep a family hostage throughout the movie. You get word anybody will kill your family kind of thing. So when people enter houses in horror movies and they take people hostage, it's got to be way over the top for me because Bogart was at his finest in Desperate Hours. Mickey Rourke was great in the remake too, but Strangers was a little less what I wanted. I wanted the bar to be raised. I always want the bar to be raised when it comes to that stuff. It was okay. It was decently done, but it's probably in my top 1,000, not 100.
so The Strangers is one that I have seen, and that was one, like, my heart rate was up the entire time, and and it's one of the reasons why I'm like, no, we're only watching horror movies in October so I can, stave myself. I'll take an extra dose of my heart medication,
You're like
whatever.
once a month. Besides that,
So then after that, we've got religious horror: The Omen,
nice.
The Exorcist, Exorcism of Emily Rose,
The Conjuring, probably things like that. Yeah, they're pretty good. I mean, I like religious ones. I'm not a big Exorcist fan. I do like The Conjuring quite a bit. I'm from New England, so the Warrens were known to be big fat liars up there.
Yeah.
They were honestly they were just grifters really. They were make believers as we called them as kids. But the stories were fascinating. The characters, like the nun, that's a great one. I love the Nun movie. I love the character of the nun. It's so dark and just everything you've learned. I was an altar boy as a child, believe it or not. So
Okay.
I know that stuff back to front, left to right. And my grandfather was a deacon, so I've really fallen far from the tree. I know. But the nun is one of my favorite newer characters. Bonnie Aarons does such a good job. I mean, the makeup's good, but she looks very much like the nun in real life. The nose and everything, that's like all real, no prosthetics. But she's so evil and crazy and just no holds barred when it comes to the nun. I love it. I wish they would do a little bit more with her, but I'm intrigued by that story for sure. Religious horror is pretty cool.
You think they'll do another?
Oh yeah. I mean, you got to make money. I mean, it's like we do another SC horror, I guess. So I got to make some cash. No.
After that, we've got slasher films.
Mm-hmm.
So that tends to be a favorite category. Friday the 13th, then going more modern with Scream.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on slasher films?
I love slasher films. I mean, I hate Friday the 13th. I'll be honest with you. I find it boring. I love Jason X. That's a little crazy, but I love more the Nightmare on Elm Street. I love Scream. I mean, when you're in the '90s and something comes out that epic, you just go, "Wow, we're back! Cool." Um, I love Scream a lot. I mean, I do have quite the Scream collection. Uh,
Were you on board for all of the Screams?
yeah, I don't care if they call it Scream in space, dude. I'm in like Flint on those. I'll see them in the theater. I mean, hell, I even got the 6 foot, 8 foot standee from the theater in my garage. Uh,
Okay.
there's something about it. It started off as sort of like the Gen Xer horror,
Sure.
where we were grown up, we were just learning who we were and just getting jobs and just getting married and just having kids, that sort of age. Some of us, and it stuck with me for years. It's kind of like I know you did last summer. It's one of the movies I've seen in a long time, but it sticks with me because it's the '90s. It's what I remember. It's
Right.
like I remember being broke. I remember being like my first successful show. I remember this and that, and I remember all those things in the movies, even the scenery and the posters on the wall, being in my dorm. So those stick with me because maybe it's just love of the decade, um, but Scream, man, it's such good. I will watch Scream 50.
I've watched all the Scream movies.
They're great.
That's one that, I mean, it's the right age bracket for me. So,
Right. I
um,
mean, I'm 49, so I mean, it's in my wheelhouse.
absolutely. After that, we've got supernatural horror. So your Draculas, your mummies, your all of that. And your wife is really into classic monsters, right?
She is. She's actually she's strange with horror. Like she'll watch anything with me and I have to give her lots of credit for that because I watch some crap. I mean, not Poltergeist. Poultrygeist is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's a trauma flick. It's very
Chickens?
zombie chicken. Night of the Zombie Chickens. Night of the Chicken Dead actually is the tagline. Poultrygeist is musical. It's got tons of nudity, tons of blood, tons of comedy, dancing. I mean, it's great. It's very fun. It's a fun watch, and if you like really funny lyrics, absolutely. So she'll watch stuff like that. She hates that movie, and I don't know why because it's one of my top probably 10 horror films of all times. Um, but she'll watch pretty much anything I say. Hey, let's watch this crap. And she'll be a good sport and watch it. But she gravitates more towards like Paranormal Activity, classic monsters. She'll watch the Rob Zombie movies with me, and she likes those. I mean, who else would go on a date with you to watch Three from Hell? I mean, my wife she's Wonder Woman and the Bride of Frankenstein rolled into one. She's such an amazing person, and she feels bad for me. I think I weigh her down because she's in her PhD program about to finish that, and she's a professor at a university, and she kind of helps me on the weekend. But she also puts up with a lot of my crap. I mean, my entire downstairs is filled with like mostly Rob Zombie and Halloween 3 stuff. Um, so she puts up with a lot of that, but she has her spaces in the house too. Although we share the whole house, she lets me be free to decorate because I remember growing up, I didn't have a room. I didn't have a bedroom growing up. So I was never able to do and go wild in any certain place in the world. I'm gonna go inside so we don't get all this noise. Oh no, they're gone. Okay, car was right by. But I was never allowed to decorate a spot. So it was like, go nuts, Jay. Your homework is to pick out something crazy. I don't care what it is. You put it here. So I bought a House Thousand Corpses poster because it's in my top 3 of all time. So why not? I'm from the same area as Rob Zombie. I follow his career. I love his movies. I think he can do no wrong. So why not?
Oh, that's fantastic. It's like next to the pretty, decor, the pretty
We have nothing
lamps
pretty.
and
No, I mean we do have a Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein wall
okay.
between our dining room and our living room. So we put all that there. We've got real horror, which is like Marie Laveau stuff from New Orleans, Cameron masks, like the voodoo masks. We have that on the wall.
Okay.
We've got a curio cabinet with oddities, like really crazy oddities, files on people's like psychiatric files and arrest records, and so we get some real stuff. And then I've got a crap ton of, um, I've got props from some Rob Zombie movies, some masks made from the people that were on set. I've got a bunch of rare stuff, which is cool as hell. When people walk in, especially my daughter's 13. I've got 3 kids, 13, 13, 11. But when their friends walk in, I'll know like they're good friends if they come back or their parents let them come back.
It's a good gauge.
Trial by fire.
Teen horror we already kind of talked about, so I know what you did last summer.
Right.
It also included ones that I hadn't heard of. I Was a Teenage Werewolf.
Oh yeah, it's Michael Landon, dude. like Highway to Heaven, Michael Landon, Little House on the
Uh-huh.
Prairie. Michael Landon was in that one. He's the
Oh,
werewolf.
Frankenstein's daughter?
Yep. Or
Yeah.
Frankenstein meets Jesse James. That's another good one.
Uh, I had no idea. So it listed I Know What You Did Last Summer and The Faculty, both of which I was familiar
I
with.
like The Faculty too.
I like The Faculty too.
I
I feel
saw
like a
the
lot of people don't.
Well, that's because I was seeing those in the theater. Like, oh my God, there's a Halloween movie out in the '90s. I don't care if H2O sucks. I'm gonna watch it anyway, dude. When they were in the theater and you could not find anything but Jim Carrey movies or garbage like that, like you had to really seek stuff out. So when a Myers movie came out, no matter how crappy it looked, you went and saw it.
Where'd you land on Final Destination? Like, can you drive behind a log truck?
Yeah, I don't care about that. It's just it's a good idea, poorly executed sometimes. The
Oh,
death
especially
scenes are
after the
pretty good.
first one.
Right. The death scenes were good, but I mean, like, how many times are you gonna walk under like giant plated glass and get smushed? Like, how often are you
Right.
gonna are you gonna look up and see a skyscraper and a crane's gonna fall on your? I mean, that's very, very rarely. Log truck was good, but I don't know. It got to be like, oh man, roller coasters now, dude. Okay, all
Yeah.
right. But
So, and I watched all
that
the
was
Final
3D. That one.
Destinations, but like yeah, I don't remember if it was second one or third one, but like where the water's like chasing them down in the bathroom in order
Right,
to electrocute them. I'm
right.
like, oh, come on now. Come on.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
it got to be a little much.
and then we got regional horror.
Yep,
So Japanese
sure.
horror or Italian, German, Spanish,
Love it
British,
all.
whatever. All of it.
Oh
So do you
yeah.
watch it dubbed or subtitled
Subtitle,
or
dude. I don't ever watch it dubbed. If I'm watching a dubbed movie, it's because I'm deaf, or it's because there's so much noise in the house. Now, I mean, I have a huge love for Asian cinema, anyways. The Killer. It's actually not even a horror movie. It's my favorite movie of all time. It's a Asian movie, Chinese movie with Chow Yun Fat as a hitman. I love Asian cinema. I watch Asian Crush. If you want something that's non-horror, I can recommend to you. If you go on Asian Crush, honestly, this is an honest thing. So there's a Switch Girl. It's actually a very fun comedy romance sort of thing. It's not horror, so you can watch it any other time of year but October. But it's a TV series. Season one's on there, and you can get season two. I've barely seen ones like here and there on a website. But it's a really great show about a popular girl who is like farts and stuff at home and is a total slob, but she's the most popular girl at school, and she has her identity being torn. I see. I love all genres, man. But I mean that one's pretty great. It's one of my favorite shows. So I mean, I can recommend a lot of Asian stuff to you. Italian, sure, Carbucci and things like that, but that's more like spaghetti westerns. Horror stuff for that. Cannibal Holocaust. That's an Italian movie. One of the most banned movie of all time. Teaser. We actually have the lead actor coming to our show next year.
oh, do
He's
you?
the only one on the circuit. Carl York. Yeah, he lives in New York. He's a really great guy. He's the lead in the movie, the biggest scumbag in the movie, and I wound up doing his artwork for him, his first banners. And I said, "Well, dude, I got a show next year. You want to show up for nothing?" But yeah, so we managed to get our hands on him,
That's
and
pretty
he's
awesome.
he's super cool. So he told me about this whole thing where which I knew, but I wanted more in depth. When they released the movie in theaters, the director was arrested because they thought everybody in the cast was murdered. And because they were all in hiding for the release of the movie, so they could make it believable. It
Oh.
was so believable, but there's some real death in there. It's some animals, but tribal stuff was, the cannibal tribes were eating actual animals. So it's pretty gross. I wouldn't recommend seeing that in October if I were you. You need a very strong stomach for that movie, but it's also the most banned in the world. But then the cast showed up and they released the director and cleared him of charges. But it's a fascinating backstory. I'm a big backstory guy.
I'm gonna have to Google that one later.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty gross. You will absolutely hate it. Very gross. Like honestly,
Probably.
cannibal movies make my stomach turn a bit. Like the Green Inferno, that was a total mind f too. It was based on Cannibal Holocaust. It I don't know when people are eating like physical people body parts. I'm like, ew, okay, that's a little over the top for me. And I like crap, but when they make it seem way more real than just like, oh, huh, I'll take your finger, like a zombie movie. Yeah, when it's tribal and it's like you could land your plane there any day of the week, like this Thursday, and you could be eaten. That's
Oh,
scary. That's scary.
no. And icky.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, so those are all of the subgenres that came up on my research.
This was just a smattering of subgenres in the horror genre, but really, it can get even more niche than what Jay and I discussed. What the movies have in common is their ability to elicit a response from the audience, whether it's fear or disgust or terror. Filmmakers use a variety of cinematic techniques to help draw the audience into their films and create the reactions they want. In a study by Jacob Shelton, several of the most common techniques were investigated. Shelton identified things such as the use of negative space, drawing the viewer's eyes to an empty void in the shadows, as well as more common techniques such as jump scares, where there's an abrupt change in the image, with or without sound, that startles the viewer so that they jump. Mirrors, which Shelton surmises are used so frequently in these films that audiences have been conditioned to fear them, create visual depth and build tension. Filmmakers such as Kubrick use tight framing and close-ups, which causes anxiety for audience members because they can't see what's going on around the protagonist. Music is also a key component of horror movies that is used to manipulate viewers into feeling threatened or uncomfortable. Composers of horror film scores frequently use dissonance and atonality in these film scores to further submerge viewers into what they're witnessing on the screen. Think John Williams' score for the 1975 movie Jaws. With this intentional manipulation of the audience, it's not a surprise that the psychological and physiological effects of watching horror films has also been studied. In one study by Yuri Hasen et al., functional MRIs were used to observe viewers while watching a film and found that viewers tend to focus on certain aspects simultaneously and also sit as still as possible when watching the film. A different study by John Green and Glenn Sparks found that audiences tend to experience excitation transfer process, or ETP, which causes a physiological arousal in audience members. They observed increased heart rate, blood pressure, and respiration. Furthermore, their observations were that only around 10% of the American population enjoys the physiological rush felt immediately after watching horror films. And that may be the case, but at least for the people that I spoke with in preparing for this episode, they enjoy horror movies. I asked them about their favorite horror movie.
I hope my favorite is the question in here because I have a favorite.
Well, yeah, so what is your favorite horror movie?
Evil Dead.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, you're a zombie guy.
Those aren't zombies. Those are possessed people.
Like demons?
Yeah.
Oh. I definitely thought it was a zombie movie. I don't think I've ever seen it.
What? So my all-time favorite, when I say Evil Dead, it's Evil Dead Army of Darkness.
Okay.
That is campy
Yeah.
slapstick. But the original, like, I was younger when I saw the first one. The lady gets the pencil, the lady gets the pencil in the leg,
Yeah.
and they move it, and she's just going, because they keep a demon in the cellar, a possessed person in the cellar, who reaches out with a pencil and just like rotates. It's obviously fake, but when you're like younger, you're like, wow, like it's awful.
Young Frankenstein.
I gotta go with the original Halloween.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to do that.
House of Thousand Corpses, Halloween 3. I know people are going to say, that's your favorite Halloween movie? Yeah, Rob Zombie's Halloween 1. I also love The Invisible Man with Claude Rains. That's my favorite classic one. I used to clean his grave every month up in New Hampshire. I lived there. He's buried up there.
Really?
So I've got a tight connection to that one. The other one I'm going to say is probably the one that really wows me. If I'm going to pick one, it's probably Black Sunday with Barbara Steele. That thing gets me all the time.
For me, I prefer hauntings over all other things. I really love things like The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor, although those are miniseries. I also really enjoy the works of Mike Flanagan, who brought us the latter of the ones I just mentioned, as well as Midnight Mass, The Midnight Club, and The Fall of the House of Usher. If you have a suggestion of something haunty, let me know so I can check it out. I don't prefer gore and chainsaws, so keep those to yourself, please. When Jay and I spoke, he told me that he prefers B movies, and his reasons might not be what you'd expect.
What is it? And you said you like B movies. So you specifically like the ones that are, I guess, a little more campy, a little more cheesy.
Way more.
That don't take themselves quite so seriously.
Right.
So what differentiates like your mainstream, widely accepted horror and your B? What makes it a B horror movie?
Money, dude. I mean, with money, you can do a lot to make a movie look good that is total crap. It's kind of like, name a movie that's come out in the last 20 years. I'm sure there's a bunch of them that are just garbage, like The Purge. You know, the first one was like, okay, it's a fun idea, but they're just, they have marketing and they have like the best cameras and the best lighting and the best actors and the this and the that. And it's a scam is what it is. Movies are a scam. They get you they spend billions or millions of dollars to make a film to get your $12 and, make you love it by the marketing when you don't actually care too much about it. They force you to and tell you why, whether it's a song on the soundtrack or the poster or this or that. As a poster artist, I'm probably killing myself here, but the whole marketing thing when it comes to B movies, it's very meticulous. I mean, they don't just throw stuff together. It's very meticulous. It's a tight budget. The actors are not A-listers ever. Um, it's real. You can really see the love of the genre as they're making it, and what they produce is there's probably like Poultry Guys, for example. I'll go back to that. Excuse me. When they were filming that, they were filming part of it in a vacant church basement, and that's where they slept, and that's where they ate. And there was no hotels or suites or room service or air conditioning wasn't even there. This is the budgets that people work with. Independent films, they will sometimes somebody's mom will make a spaghetti dinner and that's when they'll eat that day. But that's when the real talent and love comes out. That's where a lot of the greats started, like Savini or Nicotero or Romero, Russo. All those guys, they started out just college students making stuff, and I love the raw and the not so polished, and it doesn't always have to be a clown running after you with a giant turkey leg. It can be straight up, stabbing, blood, guts, and gore. But when you see it in its rarest form and its rawest form, I think that's the unadulterated version. It's just the most. It's like a diamond in the rough. You really have to appreciate something different.
Because horror has so many subgenres and things that appeal to viewers, it also means that people have pretty varying opinions on what's good and what's not. I asked people for the most overrated horror movie in their opinion.
I wasn't a huge fan of Saw.
I think the most overrated horror movie, in my opinion, are the Saw movies.
Oh, The Hills Have Eyes.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think anything with the sparkly vampires.
I don't think those are horror movies.
Oh, they're not?
About Twilight?
Oh, those aren't horror movies?
No.
Oh, they were awful to watch.
To me, it was Scream. Scream was overrated. Scream was one of those where I was sitting there with Mr. Sherrill, and he's all like, "Oh my, or whatever," and I'm like, "Do you not watch horror movies? Do you not know what's going to happen? I mean, this is what's going to happen." That was kind of how I was with it.
Any Friday the 13th movie.
So all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the most overrated is either I mean, it's good, but Terrifier 2 is very overrated. But I have to go with Friday the 13th. I mean, I like Terrifier movies, but I like the first one so much that they're not going to top it. It is the epitome of grindhouse cinema. But 2 is just like, we have a budget now. Let's do some crazy stuff, and that was cool. But like, I'm getting kind of sick of it, to be honest with you.
Sure.
It sounds horrible and sacrilegious, but I make no apologies. I like what I like. I mean, I'm going to see the third one noon on Friday. So I mean, I obviously want to see what's going on.
Like they're still getting my money. It's fine.
They're still, yeah. I mean, I do like them. I think I'm just soured when I talk to agents and I talk to like the people that work on the movie and stuff like that, and I have a very miserable experience with them. It makes me like their crap even more, even less. Yeah. So I mean, overrated. I'm going to say as a character, Jason Voorhees. He's just a big dumb stump.
And to keep things balanced, I also asked for their thoughts on the most underrated horror films.
I'm not sure if it would be a horror movie, but I think it's suspenseful and it's got blood. The Ghost in the Darkness with Michael Douglas and Val Kilmer.
The Lions?
Yeah.
Huh.
Because they were supposedly possessed.
I gotta think about this. Ginger Snaps is a horror movie about a werewolf that's almost like B-movie. I love it. I love that movie. I watch it almost every year. It's called Ginger Snaps.
I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, now I'm curious.
Ernest Scared Stupid.
Is that a horror movie?
Yeah. Well, it's a Halloween movie for sure.
Whenever it comes to horror movies, I'm more of a gore fan.
Okay.
So Terrifier was great.
Yeah, you were just like
Terrifier. I was just like,
yes, Saw faster.
Blood, guts.
Yeah.
And all the Saw movies.
Like the exact opposite.
Yeah, I could do the Saw movies. The Terrifier, I was like, yikes. I went to bed and I was late in bed and I was like, what the f?
Yeah, no, I went to bed. I was just like, I'm content.
So, in your opinion, what is the most underrated horror movie?
Besides Poultrygeist,
besides Poultrygeist?
besides Poultrygeist, and besides Spontaneous, if I'm gonna go the all-time like really gets no love movie, I don't know. There's underloved, there's underappreciated, but if it's underrated, like man, that was just incredible, and no one's seen this. I mean, I'm a gosh. I mean, some of these would just drive you nuts. The most underrated horror movie, honestly, probably House of Thousand Corpses. I don't think it gets.
Okay.
I don't think it gets near the love it should. Um, it's one of those that's kind of a staple, maybe I guess. But if you look at people's tastes in whatever, if it's an online group, or if it's if it, when people, if I say name your top five horror movies, that would not be in it. Top 10
Right.
probably
Okay.
not be in it for most people. The entire movie, start to finish, not only does it have amazing actors that some of them were has-beens, some of them are never will be's, and some of them are up and comers. Like Sid Haig did 70s movies and he wound up being Captain Spaulding. He did Pam Grier films in the 70s. He was in all sorts of, you know, grindhouse movies. Walt Goggins, who's now super huge, played the cop.
Yeah.
He's in Fallout and he's in some Tarantino films. There's also Karen Black, who was a
Justified.
staple in the '70s in horror, and she made a comeback. I mean, there's so much in that. Chris, oh god, I remember murderer's last name. The host of the Talking Dead, Chris Hardwick. He was one of the characters in that movie. And there's so many, and it's got such a weird lore because most of them are dead now. The ones that were in corpses. It's got a strange backstory behind it. Greg Gibbs that did the set production. I mean, he's out there, and there he tells all these stories, and it's a movie that almost wasn't made because no studio wanted to put up. A Lionsgate picked it up. So underrated for sure. It's got great comedy. My friend and I that comes over here and we work all the time laughs all the time. We tell jokes, we say lines back and forth. It is the coolest movie overall that doesn't get nearly the love it deserves. I saw it in theaters. I was probably one of three people back in the day that saw it. I took my wife to see the 20th anniversary because she hadn't seen it in the theater. That was 2023. And I even had a 20th anniversary corpses party at my house. So yeah, definitely one of my best. And another teaser, we have Dr. Satan himself, Walter Phelan, at SC Horror 3D next year. I just teased two guests. Damn, there we go.
That is exciting.
It is.
Um,
It's incredible to have the people that you love to watch come to your show and you go, wow, dude, I really liked it when you drilled this guy's freaking brain open. Dude, I gotta say, man, it must have been turkey burger or something on there, but the way you pulled that off was so cool because that's one of the characters I wish to the gods they would have done another movie on. Like Art the Clown, whatever. I have mixed feelings on that series. But Dr. Satan, if they came up with an actual Dr. Satan film, it'd be nuts because he was a serial killer and like made up for serial killer. But they did so little with his character throughout the movie. It was just enough to tease you and not enough to inform you. And I'm
uh,
that person that Wikipedia is the movie as I'm watching it, and I will learn everything I can about it because I love to hear backstories and stuff. But that's definitely by far the most underrated horror movie ever made on this planet.
No matter what kind of horror movies you may like, Jay left our conversation with these parting words, which I think are a good way to experience the genre.
I would give advice instead of titles because anybody can like you should watch this and this. That's cool and all, but
mhm.
when you're watching a horror movie, first of all, scare the crap out of the person next to you. That's always fun. Second of all, look stuff up. See what else those actors do. Even the ones like Dennis Fimple. No one's ever heard of him. He was Grandpa in Corpses. See what else they do. Look at their other stuff. There's a rich gold mine out there. There's a whole entire untapped resource of movies that you may or may not have heard of. Watch independent films. Really, just if you do love horror, and that's cool if you're a casual fan too. Look through Tubi and look through YouTube and all these other movies. You'll find independent films, B movies. You'll find other films you've never even heard of, and you may enjoy them more. So, like, do a deep dive. Don't just go see Terrifier 3 and say, "Wow, I got a popcorn bucket," because that's cool. If that's your thing, man, that's cool. But I mean, I challenge people to say, all right, well, if you like this dude was in this other crazy movie that you probably would like, or get to the classics like Creep Show and stuff like watch some Romero stuff and watch some Fulci movies like Zombie that's an Italian movie. Read subtitles. Don't be afraid of other languages and other cultures because that's where a lot of horror is. I spent 2 years overseas in Egypt. There's a lot of horror over there, and you will be fascinated what you will find if you actually do your research and look things up.
I want to thank everyone who helped make this episode possible, but especially Jay Moulton from South Carolina HorrorCon. If you guys are within driving distance of Columbia, South Carolina, be sure you come down for next year's SC HorrorCon, which will be on September 20th and 21st at the Columbia Metropolitan Convention Center. This is a really well-priced convention and appropriate for all ages. That's all I have for today, my Wonderlings. I hope you've learned something new and enjoyed the conversation with Jay about horror movies. I'd love to hear your thoughts on movies that we need to check out, so be sure to reach out to me with your favorite or underrated horror movies, especially if they're about witches or hauntings, because those are my favorite. Until next time, be safe, be kind, and stay curious. The Welcome to Wonderland podcast is copyrighted by Amii Bland and is part of Big Media. This podcast episode was recorded in my closet in Irmo, South Carolina, because my house is small and loud, and this is my not-so-secret hiding space. Any thoughts or opinions expressed as part of this production are those of the hostess unless otherwise indicated. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcast. Please follow, like, and share this podcast. Find us on Facebook at Welcome to Wonderland the Podcast, and on X, the app formerly known as Twitter, at Wonderland_pod. Check out behind-the-scenes moments and other videos on TikTok at Wonderland Pod. And finally, check out pictures, additional information, and go further down the rabbit hole at our website at WTWLpod.com. To submit corrections, additional information, or requests for episodes, please email the hostess at welcometowonderlandthepod@gmail.com. I feel like I've done a spooky outro before. That one wasn't spooky, that was regular. Maybe if I was like, the Welcome to Wonderland podcast. I don't think that qualifies as spooky, does it? Happy Halloween, y'all.
The preceding podcast is a product of Big Media and copyright 2024, all rights reserved.